Welcome to the Savvy Ladies Wednesday Wisdom webinar. I'm Maggie Montemuro, and I'm the Marketing Manager at Savvy Ladies. Here's a reminder that if you have any questions during this webinar, you can type them into the chat box or you can email info@savvyladies.org. Today's presenter is Christine Gallagher, founder of She's Got Clients, a company dedicated to teaching women how to find more meaning, fulfillment, and purpose in their life through the power of entrepreneurship. Christine is also a speaker, trainer, best-selling author, and award-winning business coach. Christine believes that when entrepreneurs find the courage to share their gifts and their message in a much bigger way, they will not only attract raving fans, enroll more clients, and enjoy more income, they also become a force for positive change in the world. Thanks for being with us today, Christine, and I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Maggie. I'm excited to be here with you and the other Savvy Ladies. And we're just going to go ahead and jump right in because I've got some really great information for you today. My name's Christine Gallagher, as Maggie shared. My company, she's got clients.com. And today we're talking about 3 essential shifts, specifically shifts for handling your fears, owning your expertise, and finally getting out of your own way, because often we get in our own way and it prevents us from getting out there big and really serving the people that need us the most. So I just wanted to give a quick overview of what you're going to learn in this webinar. So we're going to talk about this interesting thing that has happened over my years in coaching, what I started to realize about clients, right? The mindset piece is just as important as the marketing and the business building that you do. But the problem is if your mindset is sort of out of whack, which we'll take a look at, a lot of times you're not going to take action on what you're supposed to be doing. Or you take action, but it doesn't quite get you to where you want to be. So we need to look at, what is up with that? What is actually going on in the background? We're also going to talk about self-image and how this actually controls the amount of money you make. Now, obviously, there are lots of elements that go into creating income in your business, but self-image is actually one of the biggies that can hold you back to earning what you deserve, from earning what you deserve. And then we're going to look at the 3 things that you need to have in alignment, right? So there are 3 things that actually have to be aligned with each other in order to reach your goals. And we're going to look at what those things are. And I'm going to show you that sometimes even if you just have one of these elements not aligned, you can really trip yourself up when it comes to reaching the income goals that you're looking to reach. So personally, everything changed in my business once I learned how much of an enormous role that mindset plays in your success as a business owner or as a professional, right? It's the primary reason why some people are highly successful and others, even if they're doing everything they think they should be doing, are not. So I'm a business coach. I work with clients all over the world. I train them, I coach them. Started my business about 7 years ago. I was very much in a place of fear, right? I was in a place of fear and I was making no money. And even though I got good at the marketing and using social media to start getting leads and all of that other stuff that people tell you to do, I was floundering, right? Which I'm sure, some of you can relate, especially when it's early on in your business. So I finally made a huge decision. For me at the time, it was a big decision to get help and work with mentors who were really successful in doing what I wanted to do. And when I decided to work with them, those were big leaps of faith for me. But making those decisions has led me to where I am now. So just so you know, I'm not a talking head here, that I walk my talk. I included this slide just to show you some of the places that I've been featured and some of the accomplishments I've had. And it's really to drive home the fact that, yes, marketing is a part of it and business building is a part of it. But so much of the reason why I got out of that place of feeling stuck and in a lot of fear was because of the work that I did on my mindset. And when I look back on the moments that I decided to get support for myself and invest in guidance for myself, which I believe is really a decision to invest in myself, those were life-changing decisions and income-changing decisions. Now, why? Why is that the case? Well, here's the really important part. I can't overemphasize this enough because often the only person that's standing in the way of us and what it is that we want is us. Now, of course, there are always things outside of our control and circumstances and people out of our control. And of course, we can have unexpected roadblocks and speed bumps that happen. But more often than not, it is actually our stuff, right? Our own stuff. So, what is the solution to that? Well, getting the guidance, the mentoring, the support that I just mentioned, that's a big part of it. But as you know from the title of this webinar, I also believe that there are really some essential shifts that business owners and professionals really need to make. And these shifts had a profound effect on me and my life. And you don't need to be an entrepreneur to incorporate these shifts, right? I mean, you could be somebody who's working in corporate, you could be, self-employed. It's really like a universal theme, right? That you want to make sure that you're not in your own way and that you're using some of these principles to guide you forward. So, without further ado, I want to jump right into our essential shift number one. And that is the shift that I like to call practical magic, right? Understand that it's practical magic. So, over the time that I've been working, I've realized that success is actually two parts, right? The practical and the quote unquote magical, right? So you need the practical, the marketing, the website, sales, list building, all of these things that you need to do, but you also need the magical side. And that's somewhat tongue in cheek, right? Magical meaning, what's up here. So if you can picture me pointing to my head, right, it's the mindset piece. And I'm sure we've all heard this before. What you think about, you bring about, right? There's that old saying, as a man thinketh, so is he, or as a woman thinketh, so is she. So, the business building, the marketing, all of those things you do in your daily life, in your work, that's important, but it's not the only thing that's dictating your success. So if your mindset is like out of whack, as we say, which means you're continuously living in a negative place inside, or inside your mind and in your beliefs, the stuff that you're doing in your day-to-day work isn't going to work, or it's not going to be enough to get you where you want to go, because often what happens is we self-sabotage, right? And I did this for a long time, and these things still come up, and I've gotten so much better at really mitigating them and flexing my muscle. But the first step is really awareness that it's happening, right? So you can think of it this way: if there's a struggle on the outside in your life, there's always a struggle on the inside, right? So what I would actually ask you to do is to look at whether you are out of sync. So your thoughts, your beliefs, your feelings, and actions, they all need to be in sync, right? So not just your thoughts, not just your thoughts and beliefs, not just your thoughts, beliefs, and feelings, but your thoughts, beliefs, feelings, and actions all together. So I'll give you an example. So you might say, I want to make $1 million this year, right? Or you might say, I want to make $100,000 this year. It doesn't really matter. Just for the example, what I'm trying to illustrate is that deep down, you need to really look at, what do you really believe about that, right? Secretly, deep down, are you thinking things like, I don't have what it takes, or it's too much work, or, I don't know enough people, or, there's something wrong with me and other people can have success and I can't, those types of insidious things that we think, right? Well, the result of that is going to be that you're not going to try, right? Or you're not going to give it, your best shot. And there's a quote by Joe Vitale, who he's an author. He's also in that movie, The Secret, that came out about 10 years ago. But he says, when your conscious mind thinks that you want something, but your subconscious mind thinks that you don't deserve it, or any other limiting belief, you will fail at getting what you want. Instead, you will actually attract what your subconscious feels is right for you. So in order to attract what you prefer, your conscious and subconscious have to be in alignment. And I know that when I first heard this kind of idea, this concept, I thought, wow, that's, really woo woo. That's really out there. I'm a very practical brass tacks girl. And I just thought, well, what does that even mean? But if you really think about it, it makes sense. Because as we said, your thoughts, your beliefs, your feelings guide the actions that you take. And how it can show up in our lives and in our work looks like, procrastination sometimes, laziness, self-created obstacles. And those can all be results of the negative thought patterns that we have going on. But I always like to remind people that, our dreams actually exist for a reason, right? It's not an accident. The ideas you have, the creative passions you have, they're not an accident. And your purpose is really to be a creator and be of service to others, right? So, what I like to say is stop indulging your gremlin thoughts, right? Now, indulging your gremlin thoughts, I said indulging, I didn't say get rid of them completely, right? Because none of us can be perfect around this 100% of the time. It's all something we need to work at, and I still work at this every day. But we can all get better at not allowing these thoughts to run our lives and not allow it to continuously knock us off course and, really steal our dreams, because that's what it does. And there's a quote that I just love around this, about the idea of our dreams being there for a reason. And the quote says, "No desire is felt until the supply is ready to appear." Right? No desire is felt until the supply is ready to appear. That's a quote by Raymond Hollowell. And I've always loved that quote because it gave me a lot of comfort, especially early on when I was getting started in what I do in my business. It gave me comfort to realize that, you know, these passions and this desire I have to do something else with my life, to really make something happen and serve others. I wouldn't have that desire if it wasn't ready to happen. Like if I didn't have the ability to make it happen, right? So that's something to think about as well. So that's essential shift number one, practical magic. So know that it's two parts. It's what's going on in your mindset, and it's also the practical stuff you do day to day. But I also want you to look at where you're out of sync and understand that, things like marketing or prospecting or doing what you do in your daily, work, that's only one part of success. And this leads us right into essential shift number two, which is to quit indulging your gremlin thoughts, right? Your gremlin fears. And again, notice I said quit indulging, right? Handle them, but you're not going to be able to obliterate them once and for all. We'd be kidding ourselves. In fact, there's a saying that I heard one time, by a mentor, and they said, new level, new devil, right? Anytime you get to a new level, there's going to be something new that crops up that, is trying to throw you off your path. But what we can do about these gremlin thoughts and fears is we can get wise to them and stop allowing them to really stop us in our tracks, right? Stop us from doing our great work. And there's actually a book I highly recommend for you guys. If you have not read it already, I do recommend that you check it out. It's called The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield, and it's a great little book. The subtitle being Break Through the Block and Win Your Inner Creative Battles. So this is a really short, easy to read book, and I read it years ago, but I often revisit the principles in the book. And basically what he is saying is that even if you don't consider yourself a creative person, even if you're not making things with your hands and things like that, we all are creators, right? And doesn't matter if we have a business, we're in a job, whatever it is. But the problem is that often there's this big huge resistance that comes up when we try to get our work out into the world, or we try to do something new, and we try to create, and resistance looks like holding ourselves back. And the great example that he gives in this book that I thought really drives this home, was this quote about the amateur versus the professional, using Henry Fonda, the actor, as an example. And he says, the amateur believes he must first overcome his fear, then he can do his work. The professional knows that fear can never be overcome. He knows there is no such thing as a fearless warrior or a dread-free artist. What Henry Fonda does after puking into the toilet in his dressing room is to clean up and march out on stage. He's still terrified, but he forces himself forward in spite of his terror. He knows that once he gets out into the action, his fear will recede and he'll be okay. And I really love that, right? It's something to think about. And so I would just ask you to ask yourself, have you ever allowed fear to stop you from taking action on opportunities that you've actually asked for, right? So I can't see you, but I'm going to imagine that a good number of you would agree with this and might nod your heads at this, right? So what fear really leads us to do is make excuses. And I see this as well. People tell me all the time, Christine, I want to grow my business. I want more clients. I want to grow my visibility. And so I'll say, well, come to my workshop or work with me in this program. And, sometimes what comes up is excuses, right? I can't afford it. I'm too busy. I don't like to travel. I can't leave my kids, right? Those are the top 4 excuses. Can't afford it, too busy, don't like to travel, can't leave the kids. But what this really is a form of self sabotage, right? It's really you saying, okay, I'll do whatever it takes, but I won't do that, right? And so these excuses really do have their root in fear. But this is something that actually set me free. Somebody told me this one day, and I just thought, how does that work? I couldn't wrap my brain around it at first. But they said, although your fears feel like they're real, they don't actually exist. And I just thought, whoa. And I really had to think about that because to me, it just didn't seem to make sense on the surface. But if you think about it, fear really is not real because there's only the present. And in the now, you're okay. And the now extends forever. It's always now, right? So when you're in fear, it's always about something in the past or the future. But the past has already happened and the future hasn't happened yet. There's only now. So fear is really just that inner gremlin. And the inner gremlin doesn't want us to grow. And it really rules us by fear and tries to keep us small because it's really trying to avoid perceived pain. And when that happens, your mind starts going, well, what will I have to give up in order to do this? It creates fear to keep you quote unquote safe, right? Or within your comfort zone. And so then what happens, and we all do this, is we use excuses to avoid making the change. I can't afford it. I don't have enough money. I don't have time. I can't travel, right? Procrastination is another big one. And I think that procrastination is just fear in disguise. And people who are successful at really combating this, they're different, right? Successful people have lots of reasons to procrastinate and be fearful. But the difference is they feel the fear and then they act in spite of it, right? And every time you do that, by the way, it's like you're flexing a muscle, so it gets stronger and it gets easier. The fear is still there, but you now know that once you move through it, what you want is on the other side. And, if you're not feeling afraid, at least a little bit, you're probably not playing big enough, right? If you aren't feeling at least a tiny bit afraid, you're not playing big enough. And first time someone said that to me, I got a little huffy about that, but it's true. It's staying in that comfort zone and staying safe and being mediocre, right? Versus stepping out and stepping up. So how do you overcome this big monster of fear, right? Well, there are a few strategies that I want to share around this. The first is that you learn to move through the fear. So when you're wanting to make a big change in your business or your income, you really need to stretch your comfort zone. Because here's the thing, as we mentioned a minute ago, what you want is really just on the other side. So it's about getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. And again, the first time I heard that idea, I thought, oh, great. Who wants to feel uncomfortable? But that's why so many people in the world, end up numbing out, right? We numb out in different ways to avoid discomfort. But the cool thing is, after you realize that this is how it works, it almost becomes like a game, right? It almost becomes fun. Like, okay, yep, there's that uncomfortable feeling again, right? I know something bigger and better is just on the other side. And, I'll share with you just real quick some of the examples from my own life of getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. The first time when I was laid off from my job and I was about to start my business, it was very tempting to go back to another job and not follow this dream. But I pushed through the discomfort because I believed that this was really what I was meant to do. The first speaking gig I ever had years ago was very uncomfortable because I was very nervous. And I just did what I could to prepare and I pushed through it. And now, speaking is like second nature. Doing my first teleseminar, my first webinar, offering my first high level coaching package, doing my first live event, right? All of those types of things are examples of where it was very uncomfortable. But when I pushed through it, the big reward was on the other side. And, the big reward is really about growth, right? Moving forward and accomplishing what you want to accomplish. And it can be really easy to wait on things, right? And not go after what you want because we're actually trained that we're supposed to wait for a perfect time. We are trained that we're supposed to wait for a perfect situation or a perfect scenario. But I've learned that you can't always wait for that, right? Sometimes you have to jump. You have to dare to jump. So that's number one, moving through the fear. The second thing you could do is really look at shifting what you believe. So here's how you can look at it. You have to start with the awareness. What beliefs are not serving me? What beliefs are sabotaging me and keeping me from my dreams? That's the first piece. So it's really starting with that awareness around what are these things that I believe that might be holding me back? Then you can look at, where did I get these beliefs? And we all have these beliefs because they come from childhood, they come from parents, school, friends, television. But you really want to think about, hey, where did I pick this up? And then you want to ask yourself, could this be false? Could these beliefs actually be false? And it's crazy because so many times we go through life believing these things about ourselves and our abilities and our capabilities, and we blindly believe them to be true. But when you really take the time to shine a flashlight on them, so often they're just things that we've been carrying around with us that are false beliefs, right? And then finally ask yourself, what if I didn't believe these things? What would that mean if I didn't believe this? So shifting your beliefs is really about where did you get these things, right? Asking where you got these things and really asking yourself, could this be false? Could these beliefs be untrue? And then looking at, well, okay, what would it look like if I didn't believe these things? So that's number two, shift what you believe. Number three is about identifying the fears. This is really just looking at what are your fears? How have they stopped you before and how are they stopping you now? For example, for me, my fears in the past have kept me in jobs that I was miserable in. They've kept me tolerating relationships, right, that were really bad for me. They've caused me to self-sabotage over and over again, right? I had to get really clear, right? Because this stuff still comes up. But the first step is really getting clarity around what your fears actually are and how they've stopped you in the past, and how they're sabotaging you now. So what I've seen is that fears, they grow and they fester and they thrive when it's dark and when you avoid dealing with them. But when you shine the flashlight, right? When you shine the flashlight, as ugly as that can be, it's like they wither away and they have so much less power when you face them that way, right? So identifying your fears. And then the fourth thing is just getting into action, right? It's not about sitting in a corner and meditating and then a big bag of cash falls on your lap, right? It's the action. Action mitigates fear. And when you face your fear, it's almost never as bad as you think, right? You simply take the very next step. So some of the things that I do to tame the gremlin, besides getting into action, is really just sort of like self-care practices, reading inspirational things, practicing gratitude, reviewing my goals, writing in a gratitude journal, every day, 3 things I'm grateful for that day, surrounding myself with people who are, believing in me and people who are advancing, right? And sometimes when we put ourselves out there in a bigger way, it can also draw criticism, right? And I know that this happens when we contemplate stepping out there in a bigger way. These fears come up like, oh no, what are people going to think or what are they going to say? And what I like to think about when I talk about this is a quote from Zig Ziglar, who was, you know, one of the forefathers of personal development. He said, "Don't be distracted by criticism. Remember, the only taste of success some people have is when they take a bite out of you." Right? And I just love that. So, one last thing before we wrap up and look at Q&A. And that last thing is our third shift, right? So this is about owning your expertise and your worth. And the reason this is important is because we often think we are not enough. And this is about self-image, right? We say things like, I'm not smart enough, I don't know enough, I don't have enough certifications, I don't have enough degrees, I'm not pretty enough, I'm not thin enough, I don't have enough testimonials, and on, right? And it's kind of like, okay, enough already, right? You are an expert, right? Thinking otherwise is really an insidious fear, and it helps keep us stalled in our life. So when you're thinking about this, you can ask yourself just a few questions. You know, fill in the blank. You know how to. What are the things that you know how to do? We all can come up with a list of things that we know how to do. Or you have experienced blank, right? What have you actually experienced in your life that gives you the information and the knowledge in order to, you know, share this with others? You've written about, right? Have you written anything in the past, whether it's articles or blogs or white papers or anything like that? You know, that goes towards your expertise. And the last one is you're qualified in, right? You're qualified in. You might have qualifications, right? So the point is you don't need anyone else's permission to dub yourself the expert. And I see people getting stuck here all the time, right? They're waiting for somebody else's blessing. You know, Muhammad Ali, who recently passed away, you know, he became known as the greatest because he said it himself, right? And no one else decides how far you can go but you. That's really what I believe. And so we have to look at stopping this thing that we do where we count ourselves out, right? We say, oh, that's not for me. But the thing is that there's nothing out there like an invisible hand, right? There's no invisible hand holding us back or holding us down. That doesn't exist. And when you stop making the assumption that things are not for you, that can really shift your life in a miraculous way. So think about it. You know, how many opportunities have you let go or turned down because you assumed that something wasn't for you, right? So stop self selecting yourself out of the game, right? And none of us is going to be here forever, right? Even though that might be morbid. But how can you use that reality as a catalyst, right? How can you take that on in your life? How can you really start recognizing that you're not going to be here forever? And how can you use that as a catalyst to not be upset or not be stressed, but to really fully be engaged in everything that you do in every moment? So think about it. Are you going to put stuff, right? Create stuff out there that helps others and changes their lives, right? If we think about some of our favorite books or some of our favorite authors, or artists, you know, if they had listened to their thoughts like, oh, you know, no one's going to want this, or well, it doesn't matter anyway, so what's the point? You know, could you imagine some of the things that we would not have, you know, the contributions we would not have from them? So the big question is, you know, what are you going to do with your time here? And I'll say this, you know, if all else fails, right, you just need to think about this. People need you. Don't cheat them, right? People actually need you. And if we let our fears and our inner gremlin hold us back, we're actually cheating the people that need us the most. So, food for thought as we wrap up here. So, those were our three essential shifts for getting out of your own way, owning your expertise, and really moving forward with what you want to do in your life. And before we go grab any questions there might be, I wanted to share something with you because you were here with me today and took the time to watch this webinar, whether live or on the recording. I have a thank you gift for you, and it's a free guide. It's instant download, and it's something I wrote a few months back, and it's called 8 Easy Ways to Move the Needle Forward in Your Business Right Now. And if you're not in your own business, you can replace the word business with, you know, your life, right? Your career. But there's some really great nuggets that I've gathered over my 7+ years in business of things you can actually do to keep yourself moving forward. So specific how to and strategies. And you can get those at she'sgotclients.com/8 easy ways. So she'sgotclients.com, 8 easy ways. And I hope you enjoy it.
Thanks, Christine. That was really great. I'd like to remind everyone, if you have a question for Christine, you can email info@savvyladies.org, or you can type your question into the chat box here. And one of the questions we had come in is about self-image. The question being not feeling good about your own self-image. I feel like I have so many different sides to my personality that I really don't know how I would represent them. So what are some tips you have about getting a better self-image?
Yeah, so that's interesting. That was put really interestingly, right? I have so many sides to my personality. I think we all feel that. And one of the things that um we can do is really about reconditioning, right? So we have to think about, what self-image, if I could have any self-image, right, that would serve me the best and serve others the best, what would that look like? Right? What do I need to believe? This is an important question. What do I need to believe about myself in order to be that person? And when you do this sort of exploratory exercise with yourself, you might start realizing, well, if I want to do this in my life, or I want to be this in my life, you know, wow, the self-image I have right now is totally not aligned with that. So I think that the first step is to get awareness around, who do you need to be, right? And present yourself in an authentic way. How do I need to present myself that would be aligned with what I'm looking to achieve? Whatever that means for you. So that's the first step. And the second step is that there can be things done to recondition your self-image. One of the ways that I've done it, there's actually several ways. But I call this the woo-woo stuff, right? Because it's not like the practical stuff necessarily. It's things that are a little bit outside the box. But for years, I've done things like EFT, emotional freedom technique, which is also known as tapping. You can look at that on YouTube. There's lots of tutorials and videos on that. It's a way of tapping on the energy meridians in your body to help, shift, your feelings and your fears. I also do affirmations, right? There are affirmations that I read out loud every morning that help recondition me to the place that I need to be to achieve what I want to achieve. The other thing that I like to do is get really clear on my goals. Get clear on my goals and then review them every day. And again, check in with yourself. Is the way I'm seeing myself and feeling about myself aligned with what it is that I'm looking to achieve? And so I think that those are some really good places to start to deal with that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And the next question we had come in is, I know that I have some expertise, but it's when I compare myself to others that I feel like I just don't know enough. I want to be an expert and be considered an expert by others, but I feel like I'll just never know enough. So do you have
Yeah.
some advice for her, Christine?
Yeah, I love this question because it just know that you're so not alone. It's so common for that to come up for all of us. And it definitely came up for me and still comes up for me. So I have to actively manage it. So one of the things that I recommend is really to do that exercise, that we saw in the previous slide. You just take some time, jot down in a journal or on paper, and really see, what are the things that give you experience and knowledge, right? Here's the other thing you need to do. Um, this is sort of like the place where you look at the situation and you go, even though I am comparing myself to others, and even though I sometimes feel that I can't measure up, I know I have value to share, and I'm going to do this anyway. So it sounds so simple, right? Just saying I'm going to do this anyway. But I have found that it's almost like a mantra that you can say to yourself in those moments when you're questioning, like, I don't want to put this out there, or I'm not sure I can do this. I'm doing it anyway, because here's the thing. It's always not as bad as you think on the other side. Like you think people are going to say, "Oh, she doesn't know what she's talking about," or all of these things. It's almost never happens, right? And it's really about our own self-talk and what we're looking at in terms of what we can achieve. And so it's not the easy answer, but the answer is to really do it anyway. Moving forward and actually pushing through that fear and that I'm not enoughness feeling is the best way to actually get over that. Because once you start moving forward and doing that, you start to realize, you know what? I can do this and it's not as bad as I thought. And, people do need me and I am an expert, right? So sometimes you really just need to jump off the ledge and know that, you'll grow wings on the way down, right? I think that's a saying. Leap and the net will appear. So I would encourage you to, even though you feel those things, know that we all feel those things and that when we push through and do it anyway, there's just wonderful results waiting on the other side because people are actually waiting for you to help them and you can't help them if you stay hidden.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
And this is the last question we have. It's, in the past, I've never been able to get over the fear. I always freeze in tough situations. Do you think it's possible that I need to shift my subconscious thoughts? And what are some tips you have to get over the fear?
Yes, I love that you mentioned. Yeah, I love that you mentioned the subconscious fears because that's really what it is. And so one of the and again, this is where I go back to sort of my tools in my toolbox. It really is the subconscious stuff because remember we said that even if you know say that you want $1 million, for example, if deep down inside you believe that you're not enough to make $1 million or whatever limiting belief, then you're not going to take the action to do what you need to do. So this goes back to where you have to condition yourself. You have to recondition sort of your thoughts and your beliefs about yourself. And sometimes you can't do that at a surface level. So one of the things that's been great for that has been, as I mentioned, EFT, emotional freedom technique. I've also done hypnosis. Um, I also read affirmations. I read my goals. I visualize where I want to be. I write in a gratitude journal, and so it makes me laugh because I'm like, wow, I have all these different tools, but really these are the tools that help keep me in forward motion when the fears come up, because what I'm doing by doing those types of things is reconditioning how I feel about myself, right? And I've been able to really shift a lot of beliefs that have been ingrained in me from childhood through doing things, like affirmations, like goals, like hypnosis, right? So I would encourage you to look at those types of things because, sometimes just telling yourself, I'm amazing and I'm great and I'm not scared, sometimes that's not enough, right? We have to sort of go into our arsenal and pull out the other tools that are available to us. So I would encourage you to do that for sure.
All right. Well, I want to thank you, Christine, for an excellent presentation, really inspiring. And thank you for your offer to the Savvy Ladies community on this slide here. And just to let everyone know, we'll send that link out as well. And thank you to everyone who joined us today. And thank you again so much, Christine.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks. Bye bye.
Bye.